Hey guys, it's DraconianRain here and welcome to part 2 of my collaboration with Orphanlast. If you watched my first video or the first video that he created, which I posted on my channel, then you might already know that for our collaboration we decided to draw an image and then give each other that image to color in. What you're seeing right now is Orphanlast's drawing, and I'm coloring it in using Critter. Now, I've heard some people say it Critter. I call it Critter because it, like, the concept behind it and the mascot looks like a cute little squirrel critter thing. And yeah, so anyway, I decided to use freeware for both the creation of my image and freeware for painting Orphanlast's image, just to sort of showcase that, you know, it's not the software, it's the artist. And I use quite a lot of programs because I love art programs. I love digital painting, and I like to see the kind of tools that are out there now and what's on the market, and not all of them are cheap, and yeah. I'm pretty sure you guys already know how expensive digital art programs can be, so I won't go on about that anymore. And I'm not actually sure how to go about talking about my process for this painting because I'm not really used to it. But what I ended up doing was diving in head first and getting straight to it, and everything was going fine up until a certain point. Really, I should have done this entire painting in grayscale, and the reason for that is if you've watched the first video, you'll understand that mood was a very important feature to this painting. And I feel like had I done it in grayscale and focused on my levels and lighting, that coloring it afterwards using a clever combination of overlay and soft lighting and other layer blending modes like that, it would have made the painting turn out a lot better. And after a certain point you can actually see where I changed to grayscale mode and start using that and adding color and other various lighting effects. And I'm used to using color straight away. I'm not used to thinking about whether or not I should start out in grayscale because I very rarely paint in grayscale these days. And one of the reasons for that was I had terrible coloring skills, and I used to only paint in grayscale. And I never learned, in the beginning I didn't actually learn how to color in grayscale images properly, but it wasn't until I gained more skill in coloring and painting and understanding, level painting as it's sometimes called, and grayscale painting, and then coloring that grayscale painting, I started to learn the benefits of either one. And sometimes there are moments where one is more preferable than the other, and this is one of those paintings where it could have turned out so much better if I had have started the entire thing in grayscale, stuck to grayscale, and worried about color last. Towards the end of the video you'll see where I basically changed my mind about the whole thing, and it was also at the beginning of this video, side by side, the original painting next to what I changed it into. And what I had done was I'd finished the painting, and then it had just been sitting there for a few days, and it was really starting to bother me, and I was like, I could have done better. I don't know how I could have done it better. I don't know what I could have changed. And then finally the kind of colors that I wanted started to sink in, and I flattened the original painting, changed it to grayscale, and then colored it, which is probably what I should have done in the beginning. But I didn't. And I like both, actually. I like both paintings. I like how both of them turned out, but putting them side by side, I like the one on the right the most from the beginning of this video, where I changed it and I focused a lot more on the mood. And one thing I tried to include throughout the entire painting was having a mixture of warm and cool tones, because in the first video, which I watched and listened to, Orphanlast was saying about being injured in the summertime and trying to relax and trying to capture that moment, and being in air conditioning, and the fan seemed to be a fairly important looking feature in this drawing and painting overall. And it's really hard to try and capture the fact that somebody's sitting in a room with air conditioning and the type of season it is, especially when it's this kind of room where you don't really see any windows. I'm assuming that's a window above the sink, but I could be wrong. I don't actually fully know what that is above the sink. I'm just going to assume it's a window. And it definitely gave me something to think about, and it was quite a difficult thing for me to capture in painting, because I more or less overthought it. And I'm the kind of artist that I like drawing things with atmosphere and mood. I like drawing emotions, and I mean, really, this painting suited the kind of things that I like to do myself or draw, but capturing it through color was such a high priority that it ended up giving me a lot of trouble. And like I said before, really should have done it in grayscale first. And I'm sure if you looked it up on YouTube, you can find plenty of reasons supporting drawing in grayscale versus color, and all the pros and cons. And it's not really something I want to go into in this video, because even though this video is 20 minutes long, describing all the pros and cons of using grayscale and color would take much longer than 20 minutes. Anyway, you probably noticed me changing brushes quite a bit throughout this painting, and most of them are just defaults, but I've tweaked them to suit my tablet, because I use an Intuos Pro. I used to use my Cintiq, but I've been having a lot of problems with the cords, and you know, I saved up absolutely forever for that thing, and with the way things are currently, I can't use it, and I am so frustrated. And the pressure sensitivity, although they're technically the same, they do work very differently. And I created a series of brushes, all from defaults, and I spent forever readjusting the pressure and the pressure sensitivity so I could get a really similar experience to what I was used to on the Cintiq, and have it work like that on my Intuos. And the other brushes, I made them from the defaults, and I edited them to behave like Photoshop brushes with just a really mild amount of blending. And really, not a whole lot about them's changed. So I know I'm gonna get that one question like, oh, what's that brush? What are you using? If I can get the brushes to export properly, I will leave a link in the description below. But if I can't, then I will create a new video showing all of the details and all of the settings of the brushes I use, but if you could just try and point out the one that you're specifically interested in, that would actually help narrow it down for me. And yeah, I didn't really go too crazy on using textured brushes. It was mostly just a very basic brush, and I focused on my shading and lighting and tried to keep it to a sort of oily pastel look, just because that's the kind of coloring style I like doing. And I can't remember if I mentioned it in the first video or not, but I don't really do line art anymore. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in my half of the collab, the first half where I was drawing an image, and you'll see some parts of the image I added to the line art, some of it I took away and just painted over, and I ended up having a mix of the two, and that's something I do with my artworks. And as we were talking about things we could or couldn't do in the collab, we both basically just said, I'm going to draw the image, you do whatever you want with it, it's yours as soon as you receive it. That means you can just do whatever. And as I was painting, I did think about whether or not I wanted to add any kind of textures, like materials or cloth or that, to see if it would make it look a little bit more interesting or maybe a little bit more realistic. But in the end I decided against it, because the more I started to paint, the more busy it got, and I really didn't want to take any focus at all away from what the image was about. I didn't want to make it too busy. I didn't want to make it too, just too overdone. The most important thing about this painting from the very start was all about the mood. I also just really wanted to do my best with this painting. It's not often that I get collaborations, especially with an artist that's actually gonna hold up their end of the deal. Usually I'm the one that's slow, but I always finish, unless those rare times where I actually forget and the other person's too shy to say, like, hey, you still working on it? And generally I don't forget, but I am only human. I screw up sometimes, but most of the time I get into a collaboration and before it even has a chance to lift off the ground, it collapses and it goes nowhere, and I've put in all this work and effort and ended up receiving nothing. And I knew from the beginning, just because of what Orphanlast has on his channel, that wasn't going to happen. So when I started working on this, I made sure to put in my best effort. Also because if I half-assed it, why would he want to work with me again if that was something we'd want to do in the near future? And anyway, so I went kind of crazy with some of the painting, wanting to put in my best effort, and it ended up being about 6 hours of recording, roughly. And that was also a huge reason as to why it took so long for me to come out with part 2, and trying to get enough quiet time to add the audio for this. It just kept delaying it and delaying it and delaying it. But Orphanlast is very calm, very cool, very relaxed, which made it a lot easier to work with him. And it just worked out really well for me personally. And I'm the kind of person who worries. I don't like to let people down, and I was really worried with how long I was taking, but it couldn't be helped, and a lot of other things popped up in my life that slowed things down as well. And Anyway, as I was working on this, I sent maybe 1 or 2 snapshots of my progress, and he was liking how it was going so far, so kept going with it. He made some suggestions and I tried it out, and I could not get it to work. And as I was painting and working on this, I started to realize certain aspects of the way that I work on things that I really need to work on. So working on this really opened up my eyes to some things that I wasn't aware of that I really need to start paying attention to and improving on. Pretty much the entire time this painting had me thinking, and it had me thinking about a lot of things, mostly about the way how I handle things, how I paint backgrounds, and I don't often get to paint backgrounds, to be honest, especially backgrounds that involve architecture. Sometimes I get to do landscapes, but not that often, and I don't always have the opportunity to paint landscapes myself, or interior, or things like that, just everyday items. And for once I had the opportunity to paint it, have a go at it, and it was drawn really well. And I had a lot of trouble with the overall lighting because, like I said, I really wanted to capture the specific mood that was mentioned in the first video, and I'm not real good at drawing backgrounds because I have bad depth perception when it comes to 2D images, and I feel like that kind of showed in this painting as well, because I just couldn't quite do it how I saw it in my head. And I tried looking up references, but that didn't help in the end. It's just something I'm gonna have to focus on more and practice in my own time to improve on. And it's something that I've always struggled with from the very beginning, but after doing this, I'm starting to realize how much I actually struggle with it and how much I really need to work on it and work harder at it. Overall, it was a pretty good image to work on, and for once, out of all of the collaborations I've done, and I've done quite a few over the years, this is the first one where it was a complete image, and it's probably the first one with a full background. And usually I kind of end up with just a character on a blank background, or just something very, very simple. Not that I'm complaining, I've enjoyed most of the collabs I've worked on, but this particular drawing has so much to look at, so much to do, so much to color, and I don't often get that kind of thing to work on. I usually end up with just a bust to color in or redraw, and I didn't get that with this collab. I didn't actually know what to expect, so it was a bit of a surprise. I'm pretty sure I surprised him with what I gave him, and I kind of feel bad because I went absolutely crazy on the line art. There is so much to do and so much to color, and I do feel bad, but at the same time I wanted to give my absolute best, and I definitely didn't want it to be boring because I have received some very half-hearted attempts and they were boring to work on, and I didn't want to be that person. So I tried pretty hard. I tried hard on my half, and I tried hard on this, and that was probably my problem too with why I struggled. I was just trying way too hard. It's right about here that you can see where I've changed my mind and turned it into a grayscale image to color through the use of overlay and some other various layer blending modes. But I kind of hope this doesn't turn into a 3-part video series, because I don't want to go changing my mind again. But at the same time, if I think of something better to do with the background or the color or the lighting, I'm probably going to add it in, because I still feel like I could have done better. But at the same time, I have hit a brick wall with my skill level, and it's unfortunate, but you know, this is as good as I can do. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching this sped up time lapse. I'm also sorry it took so long, but this is the shortest I could make it with how long it took me to record it. And I hope you guys enjoyed our collaboration. If you'd like to know more information, check out the description below.